Hey, tonight we're diving into a fascinating journey through one of history's darkest yet most transformative periods. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations. You've just woken up 40,000 years ago in what will one day be called southern France, though no such names exist yet. The world you're about to experience has no cities, no farms, no metal tools, no written language. You are Homo sapiens, anatomically modern but living in a reality so harsh and unforgiving that simply surviving another day requires skills, knowledge, and luck that most people today could never imagine. The first sensation that hits you is the bone-deep cold. It's late autumn, and the last ice age still grips much of Europe. Your breath forms visible clouds in the dim pre-dawn light filtering through the mouth of the cave where your small band has sheltered for the night. The rocky floor beneath you is covered with layers of animal hides, mammoth, reindeer, cave bear, each one representing days of hunting, butchering, and careful preparation. These furs are literally the difference between life and death, and you treat them with the reverence they deserve. You shift slightly, feeling the familiar ache in your joints that comes from sleeping on hard ground. Your back bears the constant reminder of yesterday's labor, carrying a massive section of mammoth meat across several miles of rough terrain. At 25 years old, you're already considered an elder by the standards of your time. Many of your childhood companions didn't survive to see their 20th winter. Disease, accidents, animal attacks, starvation, death stalks your people with a persistence that modern humans can barely comprehend. The cave around you stirs with quiet movement. Your band consists of about 30 individuals, from infants to the occasional person who has managed to reach the almost mythical age of 40. Each person represents a crucial piece in the delicate machinery of survival. The loss of even one individual can spell disaster for the entire group. There are no extras, no redundancy in this existence. Every person must contribute their skills, knowledge, and labor, or the group simply won't make it through the winter. You notice that Kago, the band's most experienced hunter, is already awake. His weathered face, marked by scars from encounters with cave lions and the constant exposure to harsh elements, turns toward the cave entrance where he's reading signs invisible to younger members of the group. The way the light falls, the sounds of wind, the behavior of birds outside, all of these tell him stories about what the day might bring. Will there be a storm? Are there predators nearby? Is this a day for hunting, for gathering, or for staying hidden? Your stomach clenches with the familiar gnawing of hunger. It's been 2 days since the band's last substantial meal, and your body has already begun the process of consuming its own muscle mass to survive. This is normal. Feast and famine cycle with a rhythm that governs every aspect of your existence. When game is abundant, you gorge yourself, eating until you can barely move, storing fat against the inevitable lean times. During scarcity, you subsist on whatever can be found: bitter roots, bark, insects, the marrow from old bones cracked open with stone tools. The concept of 3 meals a day would seem like fantasy to you. Food is obtained through backbreaking labor, constant risk, and no small amount of luck. A successful mammoth hunt might feed the band for weeks, but such hunts are rare and incredibly dangerous. More often, you survive on smaller game: rabbits caught in snares, fish speared in half-frozen streams, birds brought down with throwing stones. Even gathering plant foods requires extensive knowledge of what's edible, what's poisonous, and where to find sustenance. During different seasons you reach for your most precious possession, a hand axe that you napped yourself from a piece of flint found 3 valleys away. The tool represents dozens of hours of careful work, and the stone itself required a dangerous journey through territory claimed by a rival band. Every chip, every carefully crafted edge of this tool could mean the difference between success and failure in crucial moments. This axe will cut meat, scrape hides, shape wood, dig roots, and serve as a weapon if necessary. In your world, tools are not mass-produced conveniences but precious, personally crafted instruments that represent survival itself. The process of making such tools requires knowledge passed down through generations and refined through personal experience. You must understand the properties of different stones, how they fracture, how to create the precise angles needed for cutting edges. A poorly made tool can shatter at a critical moment, potentially costing you food, safety, or even your life. The craft of toolmaking is both art and science, combining technical skill with an almost intimate understanding of materials that few modern people possess. As dawn strengthens, you notice that Nira, one of the band's gatherers, is preparing for the day's foraging expedition. Her body bears the particular marks of her role, hands stained permanently from handling roots and berries, small scars from thorns and rough vegetation, muscles developed from constant digging and carrying. She possesses an encyclopedic knowledge of plant life that would shame any modern botanist. She knows which roots are edible only after specific preparation, which berries are safe in certain seasons but deadly in others, which bark can ease pain and which leaves can stop bleeding. This knowledge wasn't learned from books or schools but through direct experience, often involving life-or-death experimentation. Every piece of information was earned through trial and sometimes deadly error. When someone in the band discovers a new food source, that knowledge becomes precious group property, carefully shared and remembered. The accumulation of such survival information represents generations of human experience, each piece validated by the ultimate test. Those who were wrong died, and those who were right lived to pass on their knowledge. Nira's preparations involve checking her collection bags, woven from plant fibers and animal sinew, and ensuring her digging stick is sharp and strong. She's also examining the weather signs, just as Kago does for hunting. Gathering isn't simply a matter of wandering around picking berries. It requires planning, understanding of seasonal cycles, knowledge of territorial boundaries, and awareness of predator movements. A successful gathering expedition might provide crucial calories and nutrients, but it also exposes the gatherers to numerous dangers: getting lost, encountering hostile humans or dangerous animals, falling victim to injuries. Far from help, the social dynamics of your band are unlike anything in modern society. There are no formal leaders in the way we understand them, but certain individuals command respect through their skills, experience, and decision-making abilities. Kago leads hunts not because he was elected or appointed, but because his knowledge and abilities give the group the best chance of success. Similarly, Nira guides gathering expeditions because her plant knowledge is unmatched. Leadership is fluid, situational, and always earned through demonstrated competence. You've learned to read the subtle social cues that govern band life. A sideways glance from Kago might indicate that he's noticed signs of game. A particular way that Nira touches her collection bag could signal that she knows where certain foods might be found. Your survival depends not just on your individual skills but on your ability to interpret these communications and respond appropriately. In a world without written language, nonverbal communication carries information that can mean the difference between a successful day and disaster. The band's children, those lucky enough to survive infancy, are not the protected, sheltered beings that modern society cherishes. By age 6 or 7, they're expected to contribute meaningfully to survival. They gather small foods, help with hide preparation, learn to identify animal tracks, and begin developing the skills they'll need as adults. Childhood as a period of play and education separate from productivity simply doesn't exist. Every moment is preparation for the harsh realities of adult life, and those who don't adapt quickly often don't survive. You remember your own childhood, the constant hunger, the fear of predators, the long migrations following animal herds or seasonal food sources. You learned to identify edible plants by watching adults, often going hungry when you made mistakes. You learned to track animals by following experienced hunters, gradually developing the ability to read stories written in footprints, broken vegetation, and scent marks. You learned to make tools by observing master craftsmen, progressing from simple implements to the sophisticated hand axe you now carry. The emotional landscape of your existence is similarly harsh. Grief is a constant companion, as death strikes frequently and without warning. You've lost siblings to disease, hunting companions to animal attacks, elders to the simple accumulation of wear that eventually breaks down even the toughest human bodies. But grief cannot be indulged for long. The demands of survival require that mourning be brief and practical. The dead are mourned, then their possessions distributed to those who can best use them, their knowledge preserved through retelling, their roles filled by others who must quickly adapt to new responsibilities. Love exists, but it's intertwined with survival in ways that might seem cold to modern sensibilities. Partnerships form based partly on attraction but heavily on practical considerations: hunting skill, gathering knowledge, tool-making ability, health, and fertility. A mate who cannot contribute to survival puts the entire band at risk. Yet within these practical constraints, genuine affection develops. You've seen couples share their last food, tend each other through illness, and grieve deeply when death parts them. Your own partner, Asha, represents this complex blend of practical necessity and emotional attachment. She excels at hide preparation, a skill that literally keeps the band alive during harsh weather. Her nimble fingers can turn a raw animal skin into waterproof clothing or bedding through processes that take weeks and require precise timing. But beyond her practical value, you find comfort in her presence, strength in her counsel, and warmth in her companionship during the long, cold nights. The hide preparation process itself illustrates the incredible complexity hidden behind seemingly simple prehistoric life. When hunters successfully kill a large animal, Asha and the other hide workers begin a process that requires extensive knowledge of chemistry, timing, and technique. The hide must be removed without damaging it, then cleaned of all flesh and fat. It's then treated with natural chemicals, often derived from animal brains or certain plants, that prevent rot and make the material flexible. The process involves scraping, soaking, stretching, and working the hide for days or weeks until it becomes the vital material that keeps your people alive. Every step of this process can go wrong. Hides that are improperly prepared will rot, crack, or become inflexible. In a world where clothing and shelter materials cannot be purchased or easily replaced, such failures can be catastrophic. The knowledge required to consistently produce good hides represents generations of experimentation and refinement. Asha learned this craft from her mother, who learned it from her mother, in an unbroken chain of knowledge transmission going back hundreds of generations. As the morning progresses, the band begins to organize for the day's activities. There's no central planning committee or formal decision-making process. Instead, information flows through informal conversations, observations, and the kind of group consensus that emerges from people who've lived together closely for years. Kago mentions fresh mammoth tracks seen yesterday evening. Nira reports that certain winter roots should be ready for harvest in a valley 2 days' walk away. Someone else notices that the weather signs suggest a storm approaching from the west. These pieces of information are weighed against the band's current situation: food supplies, the health of various members, the condition of tools and equipment, the season's progression toward winter. Gradually, a plan emerges. The younger, stronger hunters will follow the mammoth tracks, hoping for a kill that could sustain the band for weeks. The gatherers will make a shorter expedition to harvest what they can before the storm arrives. The elders and those with young children will work on tool maintenance and hide preparation. This decision-making process, while informal, represents a sophisticated form of collective intelligence. Each person contributes their specialized knowledge, and the group synthesizes this information into decisions that account for multiple variables and competing priorities. There's no written analysis, no formal models, but the reasoning is often more sophisticated than what emerges from modern bureaucratic processes. The difference is that here, wrong decisions kill people quickly and obviously. You reassign to the hunting party, a role that fills you with both excitement and dread. Hunting large game like mammoth is incredibly dangerous, but success means abundant food for the entire band. The mammoth tracks Kago found suggest a small group, perhaps a mother with adolescent offspring, that might be vulnerable to attack. But vulnerable is relative when dealing with animals that stand 12 feet tall and weigh several tons, equipped with massive tusks and protective instincts that make them among the most dangerous prey on Earth. The preparation for such a hunt involves checking every piece of equipment with the kind of attention modern surgeons give to their instruments. Your spear points, carved from mammoth ivory and hafted to straight wooden shafts, must be perfectly sharp and securely attached. Your throwing sticks, sophisticated weapons that increase the force and accuracy of spear throws, must be balanced and undamaged. Your backup tools, emergency fire-starting materials, and basic medical supplies must all be verified and properly carried. But equipment is only part of the preparation. The hunters spend time discussing strategy, based on Kago's observations of the mammoth's location, apparent health, and behavior patterns. The terrain where the encounter will likely occur must be analyzed for advantages and escape routes. Wind direction must be considered, as mammoths have excellent scent detection. The hunters must also plan for various contingencies. What if there are more mammoths than expected? What if other predators are in the area? What if someone is injured during the hunt? These strategic discussions reveal another aspect of prehistoric life that modern people rarely appreciate: the incredible sophistication of planning and analysis that survival required. Your ancestors were not simple brutes acting on instinct. They were intelligent people applying complex reasoning to life-or-death situations. The difference between success and failure often lay in the quality of analysis and planning that preceded action. As the hunting party prepares to depart, you take what might be your final look at the camp. The familiar cave, the fire that provides warmth and protection, the faces of band members who might never see you again, all of these images are carefully stored in memory. You've been on dozens of hunts, but each one carries the real possibility of death. Mammoth hunting has claimed many friends and relatives over the years. You know that courage isn't the absence of fear but the willingness to act despite terror. The journey to the mammoth location takes several hours across terrain that challenges every step. There are no paths in your world, no bridges across streams, no cleared passages through dense vegetation. Every mile requires constant decision-making about route selection, often involving difficult trade-offs between distance and safety, speed and stealth. The hunters move in a loose formation that allows for communication while maintaining tactical flexibility along the way. You're constantly reading the landscape for information. Animal tracks tell stories about what species are in the area, how recently they passed, whether they seemed relaxed or agitated. Broken vegetation suggests the passage of large animals or the presence of competing human bands. Scent carries information about predators, water sources, and weather changes. Your senses, sharpened by a lifetime of depending on them for survival, process information that would be invisible to most modern humans. The mental map you maintain of your territory would impress any modern cartographer. Without written records or permanent landmarks, you navigate using a complex system of topographical features, seasonal markers, and remembered experiences. You know where water can be found during different seasons, which areas are likely to hold game, where dangerous predators tend to hunt, and how weather patterns affect travel conditions. This knowledge represents not just your own experiences but information shared by other band members, creating a collective understanding of the environment that surpasses what any individual could develop alone. As you approach the area where the mammoths were last seen, the hunting party slows and becomes more cautious. Every step now requires careful attention to noise, scent, and visibility. The hunters spread out into a formation that allows them to approach from multiple directions while maintaining communication through hand signals and subtle vocalizations. Years of hunting together have created an almost telepathic coordination that allows the group to function as a single organism. The first sight of the mammoth family sends adrenaline coursing through your body. 3 animals graze in a small meadow, a mature female, probably the mother, and 2 younger mammoths that appear to be adolescents. The family seems relaxed, suggesting they haven't detected the hunting party's presence. But appearances can be deceiving with mammoth. They're intelligent animals with acute senses and protective instincts that make them extremely dangerous when threatened. Kago, serving as hunt leader, takes long minutes to assess the situation. The wind direction is favorable, blowing from the mammoths toward the hunters, which carries human scent away from the prey. The terrain offers some advantages. The meadow is relatively open, reducing the chance that a wounded mammoth could use thick vegetation for cover, but there are also trees nearby that could provide escape routes if the hunt goes wrong. Most importantly, the mammoth family's behavior suggests they're healthy and alert, dangerous, but not desperate or unpredictable in the way that sick or injured animals can. Beta attack plan that emerges from hurried consultations reflects both sophisticated tactical thinking and intimate knowledge of mammoth behavior. The hunters will attempt to separate one of the younger animals from the protective mother, using coordinated movements to create confusion and panic. Multiple spears will be thrown simultaneously to maximize the chance of inflicting serious wounds while minimizing the time any individual hunter is exposed to counterattack. If successful, the hunt could provide thousands of pounds of meat, hide, bone, and ivory. If unsuccessful, hunters could be killed or seriously injured. The moment of attack arrives with explosive suddenness. Kago's signal, a sharp whistle that mimics a bird call, triggers coordinated action from multiple directions. Hunters emerge from concealment, shouting and waving to startle the mammoth family while hurling spears with deadly accuracy. The carefully planned chaos works initially, separating one of the younger mammoths from its relatives and landing several spear hits that begin to weaken the animal, but mammoth don't die easily, and the wounded animal's desperate charge nearly tramples 2 hunters who barely escape by throwing themselves into thick brush. The mother mammoth, enraged by the attack on her offspring, becomes a massive engine of destruction, using her tusks and trunk to attack anything within reach. The meadow becomes a scene of controlled chaos as hunters attempt to maintain pressure on the wounded animal while avoiding the lethal fury of its protective parent. You find yourself face to face with several tons of enraged mammoth when the wounded animal suddenly changes direction and charges directly toward your position. Time seems to slow as you calculate distance, speed, and angles with the kind of split-second precision that separates living hunters from dead ones. Your throwing stick sends a spear flying with accuracy born of thousands of hours of practice, and the point finds its mark just behind the animal's front leg, where it might reach vital organs. The impact staggers the mammoth but doesn't stop its charge. You dive sideways, feeling the wind of the animal's passage and the ground-shaking impact of its feet as it rushes past. Rolling to your feet, you see that other hunters have also landed successful hits, and the wounded mammoth is beginning to weaken from blood loss. But the animal is still extremely dangerous, and the protective mother continues to patrol the area, preventing the hunters from approaching for a finishing blow. What follows is a deadly game of patience and positioning that could last hours. The hunters must maintain pressure on the wounded animal while avoiding the mother's attacks, waiting for blood loss to weaken their target enough for a safe approach. Meanwhile, the mammoth family's distress calls might attract other mammoths or dangerous predators drawn by the scent of blood. Every minute increases both the chance of success and the risk of disaster. The wounded mammoth's movements become increasingly unsteady as blood loss takes its toll. But even a dying mammoth remains incredibly dangerous, and the hunters must resist the temptation to approach too quickly. Patience in these moments often means the difference between a successful hunt and a tragedy that could devastate the band. Kago's experience shows as he restrains younger hunters eager to claim their prize, waiting until he's certain the animal can no longer mount an effective defense. The final moments come with surprising swiftness. The wounded mammoth's legs buckle, and it collapses with ground-shaking impact. But even then, the hunters approach with extreme caution, ready to retreat if the animal shows any signs of life. A wounded mammoth's death throes can kill an unwary hunter, and the protective mother still patrols nearby, though she seems to be losing interest in continuing the fight. The successful kill triggers a complex series of activities that will occupy the hunters for the rest of the day and well into the night. First, the carcass must be quickly and efficiently butchered before scavengers, including other human bands, arrive to contest the prize. The process requires sophisticated knowledge of anatomy, as the hunters must remove maximum usable material while working as quickly as possible under dangerous conditions. Every part of the mammoth serves a purpose in your world where nothing can be wasted. The meat provides essential protein and fat, but it must be processed correctly to prevent spoilage. Some will be eaten immediately, some dried into jerky for later consumption, and some cached in natural refrigerators created by digging pits in permanently frozen ground. The hide becomes clothing, shelter, and containers. Bones become tools, weapons, and structural elements for shelters. Even the mammoth's hair finds uses as thread, padding, and fire-starting material. The ivory tusks represent particular treasures, not for their beauty but for their utility. Mammoth ivory can be carved into spear points that are both harder and sharper than stone. It can become needles for sewing, awls for hide working, and various tools that are essential for survival. The value of these tusks goes beyond their immediate utility. They can be traded with other bands for resources not available in your territory, creating economic relationships that span hundreds of miles. But before any of this wealth can be realized, the mammoth must be processed under extremely challenging conditions. The work must be done quickly, before the meat spoils or other mammoth arrive to investigate. The hunters must remain alert for predators attracted by the scent of blood. And the weather, which has been threatening storms all day, could turn the work site into a deadly exposure situation if proper precautions aren't taken. Your role in the butchering process involves some of the most physically demanding work you've ever performed. Using stone tools to cut through mammoth hide and muscle requires enormous effort and precise technique. A misplaced cut could ruin valuable material or result in serious injury. Your hands, already calloused from years of tool use, develop new blisters within hours. Your back and shoulders scream from the constant bending and lifting required to process such massive amounts of material. The work continues long after sunset, illuminated by fires that serve multiple purposes, providing light for the delicate work of butchering, keeping predators at bay, and beginning the process of cooking meat that will feed the band for weeks. The fires must be carefully managed, large enough to be effective but not so large that they attract unwanted attention from other human groups who might contest the hunter's claim to the mammoth. As the night progresses, you begin to understand why mammoth hunts are relatively rare events in your band's calendar. The physical demands of processing such enormous animals push hunters to their absolute limits. Your hands shake from exhaustion, your vision blurs from the combination of strain and smoke, and your body protests every movement. Yet the work must continue because spoiled mammoth meat represents not just lost opportunity but potential starvation for the band during the harsh months ahead. The successful completion of butchering marks only the beginning of a new set of challenges. The processed mammoth parts must now be transported back to the band's camp, a journey that will require multiple trips over several days. Some material can be carried immediately, but much must be cached in locations that provide natural preservation while being defensible against both animal and human scavengers. The selection of caching sites requires the same kind of sophisticated environmental knowledge that guides all aspects of your survival. Natural refrigeration created by permafrost, wind patterns that discourage scavenging insects, terrain features that can be easily defended, proximity to water sources for processing work, all of these factors must be evaluated and balanced in choosing where to store your precious mammoth wheel. That's dawn breaks after the long night of butchering. You take stock of what has been accomplished. The successful hunt will indeed provide for the band through much of the coming winter, but the work has also extracted a significant toll. 2 hunters suffered injuries that will require days of recovery. Everyone involved is exhausted to the point where reaction times and decision-making abilities are impaired. And the conspicuous wealth of mammoth meat makes the hunting party a target for both human and animal competitors. The journey back to camp with the first load of mammoth materials becomes its own survival challenge. The hunters must navigate the same difficult terrain they crossed earlier, but now they're carrying heavy loads that slow their movement and reduce their tactical flexibility. Exhaustion makes everyone more prone to accidents and poor decisions. And the scent of fresh meat that surrounds the party acts like a beacon for every predator in the region. Your own load consists of choice cuts of mammoth meat wrapped in sections of hide, along with several pieces of valuable ivory that will be crucial for toolmaking. The total weight approaches the limits of what you can carry across rough terrain, but reducing the load means making additional dangerous trips or leaving valuable materials behind. As with every decision in your world, the choice involves balancing immediate capabilities against future consequences. The first day's journey proceeds without major incident, though the hunting party moves more slowly than usual and must take frequent rests. Camp that night is made in a defensive position, a small cave that provides protection for the valuable meat while allowing the exhausted hunters some measure of security. But sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by the sounds of scavengers investigating the campsite and the constant need to maintain fires that keep predators at bay. The second day brings new challenges as weather conditions deteriorate. The storm that has been threatening finally arrives, bringing wind, cold rain, and reduced visibility that make travel both miserable and dangerous. But stopping means risking spoilage of the meat and extending exposure to the hostile environment. The hunters push forward through conditions that test their endurance and navigation skills to the limit. When the familiar landmarks of home territory finally appear through the storm, the relief is almost overwhelming. The sight of the band's cave, smoke rising from fires within, and familiar faces watching for the hunters' return represents safety and success after days of constant danger. But even this moment of triumph carries reminders of life's fragility. The band members waiting at home have faced their own challenges during the hunter's absence, and not all such expeditions end with successful returns. The mammoth hunt success transforms the band's situation for the coming winter, but it also illustrates the knife-edge nature of prehistoric survival. The difference between abundance and starvation often depends on such rare windfalls, achieved through enormous risk and backbreaking labor. Most days don't bring mammoth kills, and the band must survive on whatever smaller game, gathered foods, and stored materials can be obtained through constant effort. During the weeks following the mammoth hunt, as the weather turns increasingly harsh and the band settles into winter routines, you have time to reflect on the complexity of your existence. Modern people often imagine prehistoric life as simple and primitive, but you know better. Every day requires sophisticated decision-making based on extensive knowledge. Every tool represents hours of skilled craftsmanship. Every meal involves complex planning and execution. Every night survived represents successful navigation of countless potential disasters. The social bonds that hold your band together are forged by shared hardship and mutual dependence in ways that create relationships of extraordinary depth and loyalty. When Nira falls ill with fever during the coldest part of winter, the entire band mobilizes to care for her, sharing precious food and fuel to maintain the warmth and nutrition she needs for recovery. Her knowledge of plant medicines and gathering sites is too valuable to lose, but beyond practical considerations, she's loved and valued as an individual whose loss would diminish everyone. The illness also demonstrates the limited but sophisticated medical knowledge your people possess. Certain plants can reduce fever, others ease pain, and some help fight infections. Bone-setting techniques can repair fractures well enough to restore function. Basic surgery using obsidian blades can remove foreign objects and drain infections. But many conditions that modern medicine treats routinely remain death sentences in your world, adding another layer of uncertainty to an already precarious existence. Winter's deep cold transforms daily life in fundamental ways. Activities that were challenging during milder weather become exponentially more difficult. Gathering water requires breaking through ice and carefully warming the liquid before consumption. Hunting becomes limited to the few hardy species that remain active during the coldest months. Food preservation techniques that worked in autumn may fail during extreme cold, requiring constant adjustment and experimentation. The band's cave provides essential shelter, but it's far from the comfortable refuge modern people might imagine. Smoke from fires necessary for warmth and cooking fills the enclosed space, creating respiratory problems for many band members. The constant proximity of 30 people in confined quarters leads to tensions and conflicts that must be carefully managed to prevent serious disruption. Sanitation becomes a constant challenge, with waste disposal requiring careful attention to prevent contamination of living areas. Yet within these harsh constraints, human culture flourishes in ways that might surprise modern observers. Stories are told during the long winter nights, tales that preserve important survival information while entertaining and educating listeners. Songs and dances develop that strengthen social bonds and provide emotional release from the stress of survival. Art appears in the form of cave paintings, carved figurines, and decorated tools that serve both aesthetic and spiritual purposes. The spiritual life of your people reflects the constant presence of death and uncertainty in daily existence. Various rituals and beliefs attempt to influence the forces that govern survival: ceremonies to ensure successful hunts, offerings to appease dangerous spirits, burial practices that honor the dead while protecting the living. These aren't primitive superstitions but sophisticated psychological and social technologies that help people cope with circumstances largely beyond their control. Your own spiritual practices center around a deep respect for the animals that provide for your survival. The mammoth that died under your spears is honored with ceremonies that acknowledge its sacrifice and ask forgiveness for the necessity of taking its life. Such rituals serve multiple purposes. They reinforce the careful, respectful attitude toward nature that successful hunting requires, they process the psychological burden of killing, and they strengthen the social bonds that unite hunters in dangerous work. As winter slowly gives way to spring, the band begins planning for the major moves that will characterize the warmer months. Your people are nomadic by necessity, following animal migrations and seasonal food sources across hundreds of miles of territory. Each move requires careful coordination and timing, as the band must transport all its possessions while maintaining the capacity to hunt, gather, and defend itself during travel. The decision-making process around these movements illustrates the sophisticated planning capabilities your people possess. Scouts are sent ahead to evaluate conditions and report back on water availability, game populations, signs of other human groups, and terrain difficulties. Weather patterns are analyzed using traditional knowledge passed down through generations. The band's composition: who is healthy enough for long-distance travel, who requires special assistance, what equipment needs repair or replacement, is carefully assessed. Your role in these preparations involves crafting new tools to replace those worn out during winter use and repairing equipment that will be essential for travel and survival in new territories. The patient work of knapping stone tools, carving wooden implements, and preparing travel containers might seem monotonous to modern observers, but you understand that quality craftsmanship could mean the difference between life and death when the band encounters challenging conditions far from home. The first major move of spring takes the band toward traditional gathering grounds where early plants provide essential nutrition after winter's limited diet. The journey requires careful route planning to avoid areas claimed by hostile bands while accessing water sources and temporary shelters along the way. Travel days begin before dawn and continue until exhaustion or dangerous conditions force a halt, with every mile presenting potential hazards and opportunities. During travel, the band's organization becomes even more crucial for survival. Experienced scouts range ahead to identify dangers and opportunities. Strong hunters carry heavier loads while maintaining readiness for defense or hunting opportunities. Gatherers process available foods along the route, supplementing stored supplies with whatever can be safely harvested. Children and elderly members receive assistance and protection while contributing whatever capabilities they possess. The psychological demands of nomadic life add another layer of complexity to your existence. The constant uncertainty of travel, the stress of navigating through territories that may contain hostile groups, the physical exhaustion of long-distance movement with heavy loads, all of these factors require mental resilience that must be continuously renewed. The social bonds that hold your people together become even more important during travel, as mutual support and cooperation mean the difference between successful migration and disaster. When the band finally reaches the spring gathering grounds, the relief and celebration are profound. The familiar territory offers known resources, established campsites, and the comfort of thoroughly understood terrain. But this comfort is temporary, as the band will remain in any single location only as long as resources are abundant and environmental conditions remain favorable. The nomadic lifestyle that characterizes your existence is driven by the fundamental reality that staying in one place too long means exhausting local resources and risking starvation. The spring gathering season brings its own unique challenges and opportunities. Young plants provide essential nutrients that have been absent from winter diets, but many must be carefully processed to remove toxins or improve digestibility. Gathering requires extensive knowledge of plant identification, optimal harvesting times, and proper preparation techniques. Mistakes in any of these areas can result in poisoning, nutritional deficiency, or waste of precious resources. Your partner Asha plays a crucial role during gathering season, as her expertise in plant processing has been refined through years of experience and training. Watching her work reveals the sophisticated knowledge that survival requires. She can identify dozens of plant species, knows which parts are edible and when, understands complex processing techniques that transform bitter or toxic plants into nutritious foods, and maintains detailed mental maps of where different resources can be found throughout the territory. The plant processing techniques themselves represent remarkable achievements in food science. Acorns, which constitute a major food source, require careful leaching to remove bitter tannins that would otherwise make them inedible. Certain roots must be cooked in specific ways to break down toxins while preserving nutrients. Some plants are most nutritious when eaten fresh, others when dried, and still others when fermented using techniques that require precise timing and environmental control. As the gathering season progresses, you begin to appreciate the incredible diversity of foods that support your people's survival. Modern diets, for all their convenience, pale in comparison to the variety of nutrients obtained from dozens of different plant and animal species. Your people consume foods that provide not just calories but specific vitamins, minerals, and other compounds essential for health. This dietary diversity helps explain how prehistoric humans maintained robust health despite the hardships of their existence, but gathering also brings you into competition with other species that depend on the same resources. Bears, gathering berries and roots to build fat reserves for winter hibernation, represent serious threats to human gatherers working in the same areas. Smaller animals, from rodents to birds, compete for seeds and nuts that could sustain your people through lean times. Even insects can pose significant problems by damaging plant foods or transmitting diseases that affect human gatherers. The constant awareness of competition for resources shapes every aspect of your gathering activities. Areas that appear rich in foods might be avoided if they show signs of heavy animal use. Timing becomes crucial, as delayed harvesting might mean finding that other animals have already consumed available resources. Sometimes your people must harvest foods before they're fully ripe, accepting reduced nutritional value to avoid losing the resources entirely to animal competitors. Summer brings different challenges as the band follows animal migrations toward traditional hunting grounds. The warm weather makes travel easier in some ways but creates new problems in others. Water sources that are reliable during winter and spring may dry up during summer heat, requiring careful planning to ensure the band doesn't find itself without drinking water in hostile territory. Food preservation becomes more difficult in warm weather, meaning that successful hunts must be processed more quickly and with different techniques. The summer hunting grounds represent some of the most dangerous territory your people regularly enter. The rich grasslands that support large herds of game animals also attract other predators, including other human bands that may compete violently for access to the same resources. Your people must balance the opportunity to acquire essential resources against the risks of encountering hostile groups or dangerous predators drawn to the same areas. The actual process of following animal migrations requires sophisticated knowledge of animal behavior that takes years to develop. Different species migrate at different times, following different routes, in response to different environmental cues. Successful hunting depends on predicting these movements with enough accuracy to position the band where game will be available while avoiding areas where competing predators, both animal and human, might pose unacceptable risks. Your own knowledge of animal behavior has been accumulating since childhood through direct observation and instruction from experienced hunters. You understand how weather patterns affect animal movements, how seasonal changes in vegetation influence grazing patterns, and how the presence of predators alters herd behavior. This knowledge represents a form of ecological science that rivals anything developed by modern researchers, though it's based on practical necessity rather than academic interest. The summer hunt for bison, smaller than mammoth but still formidable prey, illustrates both the opportunities and dangers that characterize your people's relationship with large game animals. Bison travel in herds that can number in the thousands, representing enormous potential wealth for any group capable of successfully hunting them. But these same herds are also incredibly dangerous, as stampeding bison can crush anything in their path, and individual animals are quite capable of killing hunters with their horns and hooves. The hunting technique your band employs for bison reflects generations of refinement and adaptation. Rather than attempting to kill individual animals through direct confrontation, the hunters use knowledge of terrain and animal behavior to drive small groups of bison toward natural traps, cliffs, box canyons, or other geographic features that limit the animals' escape routes. This approach requires precise coordination among multiple hunters and intimate knowledge of local geography, but it offers the possibility of killing several animals while minimizing direct contact with dangerous prey. Preparing for such a hunt involves days of scouting and planning. The hunters must identify suitable bison groups, small enough to be manageable but large enough to justify the enormous effort required. They must locate appropriate terrain features that can serve as natural traps. Weather conditions must be favorable, as wind direction affects the hunter's ability to approach undetected. And most crucially, the hunters must ensure that escape routes are available if the hunt goes wrong and they find themselves facing an enraged herd of bison. The execution of the hunt requires split-second timing and flawless coordination. Hunters positioned at strategic points around the herd use noise, movement, and carefully thrown projectiles to panic the animals and direct their movement toward the trap. Once the bison are committed to a particular direction, other hunters emerge to maintain pressure and prevent the animals from changing course. The goal is to drive the bison over a cliff or into a canyon where they can be killed with minimal risk to the hunters. Your position during this hunt is among the drivers, hunters responsible for maintaining pressure on the bison herd and keeping them moving in the desired direction. The work requires constant movement across rough terrain while carrying weapons and maintaining formation with other hunters. A mistake in timing or positioning could allow the bison to escape, wasting days of preparation, or worse, could result in hunters being caught in the path of stampeding animals. The moment when the plan succeeds and several bison plunge over the designated cliff brings a mixture of triumph and immediate urgency. The successful drive provides thousands of pounds of meat, hide, and bone, but the animals must be processed quickly before spoilage sets in or scavengers arrive to compete for the resources. The work that follows tests the band's processing capabilities to their limits, as large amounts of material must be butchered, preserved, and prepared for transport under time pressure. The bison hunt success transforms the band's prospects for the remainder of the year, but it also demonstrates the feast or famine nature of prehistoric survival. The abundance created by successful hunts can't be taken for granted, as many hunts fail despite careful planning and execution. Your people must constantly balance the pursuit of major opportunities like mammoth or bison hunts against the need to maintain steady nutrition through smaller game and gathered foods. The processing of bison carcasses reveals another aspect of prehistoric life that modern people rarely appreciate: the incredible efficiency with which your people use every part of killed animals. Meat provides essential protein and fat, but bones become tools, weapons, and raw materials for various implements. Hides become clothing, shelter materials, containers, and rope. Even seemingly useless parts like hooves and horns are processed into glue, containers, and specialized tools. The hide preparation process, overseen by OSHA and other skilled workers, illustrates the sophisticated technology that supports your people's survival. Fresh bison hides must be cleaned, treated with natural chemicals to prevent decay, stretched and worked to achieve proper flexibility, and finally processed into specific products based on the band's current needs. The entire process requires extensive knowledge of chemistry, timing, and technique that represents generations of accumulated expertise. As summer progresses toward autumn, the band begins preparing for the most critical period in their annual cycle, the final gathering and hunting activities that will determine whether they have sufficient resources to survive another winter. The pressure of this seasonal deadline affects every aspect of daily life, as any significant failure during autumn preparation could mean starvation before spring returns. The autumn gathering season focuses on foods that can be preserved for winter consumption, nuts that can be stored for months, berries that can be dried into concentrated nutrition, roots that can be cached in natural storage sites. The work is physically demanding and time-sensitive, as many foods are only available for brief periods when they reach optimal ripeness. Your people must harvest efficiently while still maintaining the ability to defend themselves and pursue other survival activities. The psychological pressure of autumn preparation creates tensions within the band that must be carefully managed. Everyone understands that winter survival depends on successful autumn work, but the stress of this knowledge can lead to conflicts over resource allocation, work assignments, and strategic decisions. Leadership becomes particularly important during this period, as experienced band members must coordinate activities while managing the social dynamics that could disrupt essential work. Your own role during autumn preparation involves a combination of hunting, gathering, and tool preparation that keeps you busy from dawn to dusk. The smaller game that provides daily nutrition during this period, rabbits, birds, fish, requires constant attention and different hunting techniques than the large game that dominates summer activities. Each successful capture provides immediate nutrition while allowing the band to preserve larger stored foods for true emergencies. The fishing techniques your people employ during autumn illustrate another dimension of prehistoric technology and knowledge. Using spears, nets woven from plant fibers, and ingenious traps constructed from stones and wood, experienced fishers can capture significant quantities of fish during their autumn migrations. But successful fishing requires detailed knowledge of fish behavior, water conditions, and seasonal timing that takes years to develop. The construction of fish traps represents a particularly sophisticated technology that demonstrates your people's engineering capabilities. These devices, built from carefully selected stones and wooden stakes, create water flow patterns that direct fish into areas where they can be easily captured. The traps must be designed to work with specific water levels and flow rates, requiring mathematical understanding that wouldn't seem out of place in modern engineering projects. As autumn advances and the first frost threatens, the band faces increasingly urgent decisions about winter preparations. Food storage sites must be completed and stocked. Clothing and shelter materials must be repaired and supplemented. Tools and weapons must be crafted or maintained. And most critically, the band must select their winter shelter location and ensure it's properly prepared for the harsh months ahead. The selection of winter shelter involves evaluating multiple factors that could determine the band's survival prospects. The site must provide protection from wind and precipitation while allowing for adequate ventilation to prevent smoke poisoning from heating fires. Water sources must be available even during the coldest weather. The location must be defensible against both animal and human threats while providing access to cached food supplies and emergency resources. Your people's winter shelter this year is a large cave system that has been used periodically for generations. The cave provides natural protection from weather, but it requires significant preparation to become suitable for long-term habitation. Sleeping areas must be prepared with insulating materials. Fire sites must be established with proper ventilation. Storage areas must be organized for the cached foods and materials that will sustain the band through winter. The cave preparation work involves the entire band in activities that require both individual skills and coordinated effort. Stone tools must be used to modify the cave interior, creating level sleeping areas and improving ventilation. Enormous quantities of firewood must be collected and stored in dry areas within the cave system. Bedding materials, primarily animal hides and plant fibers, must be prepared and arranged to provide maximum warmth and comfort during the coldest nights. As the band settles into winter routines, you reflect on the incredible complexity of the survival system that supports your people's existence. Every aspect of daily life requires sophisticated knowledge, careful planning, and skilled execution. The margin for error is incredibly small, with individual mistakes potentially threatening the entire group's survival. Yet somehow your people not only survive but maintain rich cultural traditions, complex social relationships, and even artistic expressions that demonstrate the full range of human capabilities. The long winter nights provide opportunities for activities that might seem surprising in such a harsh survival environment. Stories are told that preserve important survival information while entertaining listeners and strengthening social bonds. Complex games are played that develop strategic thinking and provide psychological relief from survival stress. Musical instruments carved from bone and wood produce melodies that express emotions and experiences that have no equivalent in spoken language. The artistic expression that flourishes during winter months serves multiple purposes beyond simple entertainment. Cave paintings created by skilled artists document hunting techniques, animal behavior, and spiritual beliefs that represent crucial cultural knowledge. Carved figurines and decorated tools demonstrate aesthetic sensibilities that remind everyone of beauty and meaning beyond mere survival. These artistic activities represent investments of time and energy that might seem wasteful to modern efficiency experts, but they serve essential psychological and social functions that help your people maintain their humanity under incredibly harsh conditions. The social dynamics that govern winter cave life require constant attention and skilled management. 30 people living in close proximity for months at a time inevitably develop conflicts that must be resolved before they threaten group cohesion. Traditional dispute resolution methods, involving respected elders, ritual exchanges, and carefully structured discussions, help maintain the cooperation that everyone's survival depends on. Your own position within these social dynamics has evolved over the years as you've demonstrated competence in hunting, tool-making, and group problem-solving. Younger band members look to you for instruction and guidance, while elders include you in important discussions about band strategy and decision-making. This gradual assumption of leadership responsibilities represents both recognition of your capabilities and acceptance of increased obligations to the group's welfare. The winter months also provide opportunities for intensive training and skill development that are difficult to pursue during the more demanding seasons. Young people receive instruction in advanced hunting techniques, complex tool-making processes, and specialized knowledge that will be essential for their adult roles. This educational process involves not just practical skills but also the cultural knowledge, spiritual beliefs, and social understanding that define your people's identity. The training you provide to younger hunters reflects your own accumulated knowledge and experience while adapting to their individual capabilities and interests. Each student requires different approaches, as hunting skills depend partly on physical attributes like strength and coordination but also on psychological factors like patience, courage, and decision-making ability. The teaching process helps you understand your own knowledge more deeply while ensuring that crucial survival skills are transmitted to the next generation. As winter slowly gives way to spring, the band begins planning for another year of migration, hunting, and gathering. The cycle that has sustained your people for countless generations will continue, but each year brings new challenges that require adaptation and innovation. Climate patterns shift gradually over decades, animal populations fluctuate, and other human groups compete for the same resources that your people depend on. The planning process for the coming year involves synthesizing information from many sources, observations of weather patterns, reports from scouts about conditions in distant territories, knowledge of animal migration timing, and assessment of the band's current capabilities and needs. The decisions that emerge from these discussions will determine where your people travel, what resources they pursue, and how they respond to the challenges they encounter. Your own role in this planning reflects the leadership responsibilities you've gradually assumed within the band. Your knowledge of hunting techniques, terrain features, and animal behavior contributes to strategic discussions about where to hunt and when. Your tool-making skills influence decisions about what equipment needs to be crafted or repaired. Your understanding of other human groups helps evaluate the risks and opportunities associated with different travel routes. The spring emergence from winter quarters always brings a mixture of relief and apprehension. The successful survival of another winter represents a major achievement, but the challenges of the coming year loom large. Food supplies accumulated during autumn have dwindled to critical levels, requiring immediate attention to gathering and hunting activities. Equipment worn out during winter use must be repaired or replaced before travel becomes necessary. And everyone must readjust to the physical demands of active survival after months of relatively sedentary cave life. The first hunting expedition of spring often determines the band's prospects for the entire year. Success provides essential nutrition and materials while demonstrating that the hunting team's skills remain sharp after winter's inactivity. Failure could force the band to survive on gathered foods during a period when plant resources are still scarce and unreliable. The pressure of this situation affects everyone's behavior, creating tension that must be carefully managed to avoid conflicts that could disrupt essential activities. Your preparation for spring hunting involves not just checking equipment and planning strategy but also rebuilding the physical condition and mental focus that successful hunting requires. Months of winter inactivity have reduced your strength and endurance, while the psychological intensity necessary for dangerous hunting must be rekindled after a period of relative relaxation. The process of returning to peak hunting condition requires gradual conditioning that balances the need for preparation against the urgency of obtaining fresh resources. The spring hunt for deer represents a different type of challenge than the massive game pursuits of summer and autumn. Deer are smaller and less dangerous than mammoth or bison, but they're also more alert, faster, and better at using terrain features to escape hunters. Success requires different skills, stealth and patience rather than coordinated large group tactics, precision with thrown weapons rather than overwhelming force, intimate knowledge of individual animal behavior rather than herd dynamics. The hunting techniques used for deer reflect the incredible sophistication of your people's approach to obtaining food from their environment. Tracking individual animals requires reading subtle signs that would be invisible to untrained observers: bent grass stems, soil compression patterns, scent traces that linger for hours in favorable conditions. Predicting animal movements involves understanding how deer respond to weather changes, human activity, and the presence of other predators. The actual hunt unfolds with the kind of patient, methodical approach that characterizes all successful prehistoric hunting. Hours are spent in careful observation, learning individual animals' behavioral patterns and identifying opportunities for approach. The final stalk requires moving through dense vegetation without creating sound or disturbance that would alert the prey. The killing shot must be delivered with precision that comes only from years of practice and intimate knowledge of projectile weapons. Your successful deer kill provides the band with essential fresh meat and materials, but it also demonstrates the continuity of skills and knowledge that connects your generation with countless previous ones. The hunting techniques you employed were developed and refined by your ancestors over thousands of years. The tools you used were crafted using methods passed down through generations. The processing techniques that will preserve the deer's meat and hide represent accumulated knowledge that constitutes one of humanity's greatest achievements: the development of sustainable relationships with natural environments. As the seasons continue their eternal cycle and your band adapts to each new challenge, you understand that your life represents just one thread in the vast tapestry of human survival. The knowledge you possess was given to you by previous generations, and you have a responsibility to pass it on to those who will follow. The skills you've developed will help ensure that your people continue to thrive in a world that shows no mercy to those who fail to adapt. The evening fire that ends each day's survival activities provides a moment of reflection on the incredible complexity of the existence you and your people have created in response to environmental challenges that would overwhelm most modern humans. Every tool, every technique, every piece of knowledge represents human ingenuity applied to the fundamental problem of survival. The social bonds that hold your band together demonstrate humanity's capacity for cooperation and mutual support under the most challenging conditions. As you drift towards sleep in your shelter of animal hides, surrounded by the familiar sounds of your band settling in for the night, you carry the satisfaction of another day successfully navigated in a world where survival is never guaranteed. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new tests of the skills and knowledge that define your existence. But tonight, you rest in the security created by human intelligence, cooperation, and the remarkable adaptability that has allowed your species to survive and thrive in environments that would seem impossible to master. The story of your life as a prehistoric human represents just one example of the incredible resilience and ingenuity that characterizes our species' long journey through time. The challenges you face, finding food, creating shelter, maintaining social bonds, passing knowledge to future generations, are the same fundamental tasks that humans have confronted throughout history. The specific techniques and technologies have changed dramatically, but the underlying human qualities that ensure survival remain constant: intelligence, cooperation, adaptability, and the determination to continue despite seemingly impossible odds. In the quiet darkness of your cave shelter, with the breathing of your band members creating a gentle rhythm around you, you embody the remarkable human capacity to not just survive but to create meaning, beauty, and community even under the harshest conditions. Your existence proves that humans are capable of extraordinary achievements when necessity demands them, and that the qualities that enabled our species to survive the challenges of prehistoric life continue to define us today. The legacy of your prehistoric ancestors lives on in the genetic, cultural, and technological inheritance that shapes modern human existence. The survival skills they developed, the social structures they created, and the knowledge systems they maintained provided the foundation for everything that followed. Their story reminds us that human resilience, ingenuity, and cooperation are not modern inventions but ancient characteristics that have been tested and proven across countless generations of human experience. As sleep finally claims you after another day of survival in a world that demands everything humans can give, you rest assured that your people will continue, that the knowledge and skills that sustain life will be preserved and passed on, and that the remarkable human journey through time will continue long after your own brief existence has ended. In this certainty lies perhaps the most profound comfort available to any human being, the knowledge that we are part of something larger than ourselves, something that transcends individual mortality and connects us to both our ancestors and our descendants in the great ongoing adventure of human survival and adaptation. The deep winter months bring a different rhythm to your existence, one that would seem almost meditative to modern observers accustomed to constant activity and stimulation. But this apparent stillness masks an intense internal life of planning, learning, and social negotiation that determines whether your band will see another spring. The long nights become laboratories for refining survival strategies, testing new ideas, and passing down the accumulated wisdom that represents your people's greatest treasure. During these extended periods of cave dwelling, you witness the emergence of proto-technologies that won't reach full development for thousands of years. Asha has been experimenting with different plant fibers, trying to create stronger and more flexible cordage for various applications. Her work involves understanding the properties of materials at a molecular level, though she lacks the vocabulary to describe what she's discovering. Through trial and error, she's learning which plants produce fibers that maintain strength when wet, which combinations create rope that resists fraying, and which processing techniques yield the most durable results. The cordage Asha creates serves dozens of crucial functions in your band's survival system. Strong rope enables the construction of more effective animal traps, allows hunters to retrieve spears that miss their targets, and provides the binding material necessary for creating complex tools and weapons. But perhaps most importantly, good cordage makes it possible to create nets, sophisticated devices that can capture multiple fish or birds simultaneously, multiplying the effectiveness of hunting efforts. The mathematical concepts embedded in net construction would impress modern engineers. The spacing between cord intersections must be calculated based on the size of intended prey. The overall dimensions must account for the behavior patterns of target animals. The attachment points and tensioning systems require understanding of load distribution and material stress that represents genuine engineering knowledge. Yet this sophisticated technology emerges from practical necessity rather than theoretical understanding, developed by people who would be considered primitive by later civilizations. Watching the process of net construction during winter months, you appreciate the collaborative nature of technological development in your society. No single individual possesses all the knowledge necessary to create complex tools. Asha understands fiber preparation and cordage manufacture, but Kago contributes knowledge about animal behavior that influences net design. The band's most skilled toolmaker provides techniques for creating the bone needles used in net assembly. Even children contribute by gathering specific plant materials or helping with time-consuming preparation tasks. This collaborative approach to technology development creates systems of remarkable sophistication despite the absence of formal education or written records. Knowledge is embedded in social relationships rather than individual expertise, making the band more resilient against the loss of any single member. When someone dies, their specialized knowledge doesn't disappear entirely because others have observed their work and absorbed portions of their expertise through collaborative projects. The winter months also reveal the profound spiritual dimensions of prehistoric life that extend far beyond simple survival concerns. Your people maintain complex relationships with the animal spirits that provide for their survival, the natural forces that govern weather and seasonal change, and the ancestral spirits that watch over the band's welfare. These spiritual practices aren't primitive superstitions but sophisticated psychological technologies that help people cope with uncertainty, process grief, and maintain hope during the darkest periods. The cave paintings that adorn your winter shelter serve multiple spiritual and practical functions. The images of mammoth, bison, and deer aren't simply artistic representations but participate in a complex system of sympathetic magic designed to ensure successful hunting. By creating accurate images of prey animals, the painters establish spiritual connections that are believed to influence the behavior of living animals. The process of creating these images also serves as training for hunters, helping them memorize anatomical details that improve accuracy during actual hunts. But the cave paintings also function as historical records, documenting successful hunting techniques and preserving knowledge about animal behavior for future generations. The images show not just what animals look like but how they move, where they're vulnerable to attack, and what environmental conditions favor successful hunts. This visual information system represents one of humanity's earliest attempts to create permanent knowledge storage, presaging the development of writing systems that won't appear for tens of thousands of years. The creation of cave art requires technological sophistication that demonstrates your people's mastery of chemistry and materials science. The pigments used in painting must be created from natural materials, ochre for reds and yellows, charcoal for blacks, certain clays for other colors, then processed to achieve the proper consistency and permanence. The painting tools themselves represent ingenious adaptations. Hollow bird bones become paintbrushes, animal hair creates fine detail work, and human hands serve as stencils for certain design elements. Your own participation in cave painting activities reveals artistic abilities that surprise you. The careful observation required for successful hunting translates naturally into the accurate representation of animal forms. Your hands, trained through years of precise tool manipulation, can control pigment application with remarkable accuracy. Most importantly, the spiritual focus that effective hunting requires helps you achieve the meditative state that produces the most powerful artistic images. The collaborative nature of cave painting mirrors other aspects of your band's social organization. Master artists provide guidance and training, but everyone contributes to the creative process in various ways. Children help prepare pigments and maintain painting tools. Adults contribute observations about animal behavior that influence artistic choices. Elders provide spiritual guidance that ensures the paintings serve their intended magical and practical purposes. As winter progresses toward its deepest, coldest phase, the band's survival increasingly depends on the social bonds that hold the group together under extreme stress. The close quarters of cave living create inevitable conflicts over resources, personal space, and individual behavior. Minor disagreements that might be easily resolved during periods of active survival work become magnified when people have little to do except focus on their interpersonal relationships. The resolution of these conflicts requires sophisticated social technologies that your people have developed over generations of group living. Formal dispute resolution procedures involve the entire band in discussions that air grievances while maintaining group cohesion. Ritual exchanges of gifts or labor help restore balance when someone has been wronged. In extreme cases, temporary separation of conflicting parties prevents minor disputes from escalating into serious threats to group survival. Your own role in these social processes has evolved as you've gained experience and demonstrated wisdom in handling interpersonal conflicts. Younger band members often seek your advice when they encounter problems with others. Your hunting partnership with Kago has taught you diplomatic skills that prove valuable in mediating disputes between strong-willed individuals. Most importantly, your relationship with Asha provides a model of cooperation and mutual support that others can emulate in their own partnerships. The long winter nights also provide opportunities for the kind of intensive training that creates the specialized expertise essential for survival. The band's master toolmaker uses these months to pass on knowledge that can't be learned quickly during the busy seasons of travel and hunting. The processes involved in creating the finest stone tools require years of practice and understanding that goes far beyond simple technique. Under the master's guidance, you learn to read stone like others read animal tracks. Different types of stone have characteristic grain patterns, fracture properties, and optimal applications. Flint from certain geographic regions produces tools with specific advantages, while obsidian from volcanic areas offers unmatched sharpness at the cost of increased fragility. Understanding these material properties allows toolmakers to select appropriate stone for specific applications, maximizing effectiveness while conserving precious raw materials. The actual process of knapping, shaping stone through controlled fracture, requires hand-eye coordination developed through thousands of hours of practice. The angle and force of each strike must be precisely calculated to achieve the desired result. A single misplaced blow can ruin hours of careful work and waste irreplaceable raw materials. Master toolmakers develop an almost supernatural ability to visualize the tool hidden within each piece of raw stone, then reveal it through a series of perfectly executed strikes. But toolmaking involves more than technical skill. It requires artistic vision that transforms functional implements into objects of beauty and spiritual power. The finest spear points exhibit symmetry and proportions that please the eye while optimizing performance. Decorated tool handles incorporate designs that enhance grip while expressing cultural identity. The creation of such tools represents a synthesis of practical necessity and aesthetic expression that demonstrates the full range of human capabilities. Your own toolmaking skills improve dramatically during this winter training period, but you also gain appreciation for the enormous amount of knowledge required to achieve true mastery. The master toolmaker possesses understanding accumulated over decades of experience, including techniques for working with difficult materials, methods for repairing damaged tools, and innovations that improve tool performance. This knowledge represents irreplaceable cultural wealth that must be carefully preserved and transmitted to future generations. The training process also reveals the importance of patience and persistence in developing survival skills. Modern people, accustomed to rapid feedback and immediate results, might find the slow pace of skill development frustrating. But in your world, incomplete knowledge or inadequate skills can be fatal. The extended training periods ensure that critical capabilities are thoroughly mastered before they're needed in life or death situations. As the winter months wear on, the band's food supplies begin to dwindle despite careful rationing and conservation efforts. The stored meat from autumn hunts has been consumed gradually, supplemented by whatever small game can be obtained during brief hunting expeditions. Cached plant foods provide essential nutrients but can't satisfy the caloric needs of active adults working to maintain survival under harsh conditions. The gradual onset of hunger becomes a constant background presence that influences every aspect of daily life. The experience of chronic hunger teaches lessons about human adaptation that no modern textbook could convey. Your body learns to function efficiently on reduced caloric intake, conserving energy through slower movement and extended rest periods. Your mind adapts by focusing intensely on survival priorities while filtering out non-essential concerns. Your social behavior changes as cooperation becomes even more crucial when resources are scarce. But hunger also brings dangers that threaten individual and group survival. Malnutrition reduces resistance to disease, making minor illnesses potentially fatal. Reduced energy levels increase the risk of accidents during essential activities like firewood gathering or tool maintenance. Most dangerous of all, hunger can lead to poor decision-making as desperate people take unnecessary risks in pursuit of food. The band's response to these hunger pressures demonstrates the sophisticated resource management strategies your people have developed. Remaining food supplies are allocated based on complex calculations that consider individual contributions to group survival, current health status, and potential for future productivity. Hunters receive larger portions because their success is essential for everyone's survival. Pregnant or nursing women get priority access to the most nutritious foods. Children receive special attention because they represent the band's future. These allocation decisions require wisdom that goes beyond simple fairness or equality. The band's survival depends on maintaining the capabilities of its most productive members while ensuring that everyone receives enough nutrition to avoid starvation. The social tensions created by unequal food distribution must be managed carefully to prevent conflicts that could destroy group cohesion. Leaders must balance immediate needs against long-term survival prospects in ways that require both analytical thinking and emotional intelligence. Your own experience of winter hunger provides insights into human resilience that shape your understanding of survival. You learn that the human body can function on far fewer calories than modern people typically consume, though not without cost in comfort and energy. You discover that mental focus can be maintained even under nutritional stress, though cognitive processes may slow. Most importantly, you understand that psychological factors often determine survival outcomes more than purely physical considerations. The approaching end of winter brings both hope and anxiety as the band prepares for the challenging transition to spring survival activities. The remaining weeks of cold weather must be endured with diminishing food supplies and equipment worn by months of constant use. But spring also promises renewal, fresh plant foods, returning animal migrations, and the opportunity to break free from the confining routine of cave dwelling. Preparation for spring emergence requires careful planning and resource allocation that could determine the band's survival prospects for the entire year. Equipment must be repaired or replaced using materials saved specifically for this purpose. Remaining food supplies must be rationed to provide energy for the increased activity that spring activities will require. Most critically, the band must decide when to emerge from winter shelter. Too early risks exposure to late storms and limited food availability, while too late means missing optimal gathering and hunting opportunities. The decision-making process around spring emergence illustrates the sophisticated environmental knowledge your people possess. Weather prediction techniques based on cloud patterns, wind behavior, and animal activity provide remarkably accurate forecasts of changing conditions. Knowledge of plant growth cycles helps determine when gathering opportunities will become available. Understanding of animal migration patterns indicates optimal timing for spring hunts. As the first tentative signs of spring appear, subtle changes in daylight duration, slight warming during midday hours, altered behavior of birds and small animals, the band begins preparing for emergence with activities that gradually increase physical conditioning and equipment readiness. Tool maintenance projects that were postponed during the coldest months receive urgent attention. Physical exercises help restore strength and coordination reduced by months of reduced activity. Strategic discussions refine plans for spring activities based on current conditions and resource availability. Your own preparation for spring hunting involves not just physical conditioning but psychological readjustment to the intensity and danger that active survival requires. Winter's relative safety and predictability must give way to constant alertness and decision-making that could determine life or death outcomes. The mental skills necessary for successful hunting, patience, focus, quick reflexes, accurate assessment of risk and opportunity, must be rekindled after months of dormancy. The first expedition outside the winter cave after months of confinement provides sensory experiences that remind you why your people endure the hardships of nomadic life. Fresh air cleansed by winter winds, sunlight that illuminates colors absent from firelit cave interiors, sounds of awakening wildlife preparing for spring activities, all of these sensations provide psychological renewal that counteracts the depression and anxiety inevitable during extended cave dwelling. But the spring landscape also reveals the challenges that lie ahead. Winter storms have altered familiar terrain features, requiring updates to mental maps and navigation knowledge. Snow and ice conditions affect travel routes and hunting opportunities. Signs of other human groups indicate potential competition for resources or threats to territorial security. The transition from winter to spring survival represents a complex adaptation process that tests every aspect of your people's capabilities. The success of spring emergence depends largely on the band's ability to quickly resume the full range of survival activities that sustained them through previous seasons. Hunting skills must be restored to levels necessary for success with critical early-season prey. Gathering knowledge must be applied to identifying and harvesting the first available plant foods. Tool-making capabilities must respond to immediate equipment needs while building inventory for future requirements. As your band finally emerges fully into spring conditions, ready to resume the nomadic cycle that has sustained your people for countless generations, you carry with you the hard-won wisdom of another winter survived. The knowledge gained during months of intensive social interaction, technological development, and resource management will inform decisions throughout the coming year. The social bonds strengthened during periods of shared hardship will provide the foundation for cooperation during challenging survival situations. The spring emergence marks not just the end of winter but the continuation of the remarkable human story of adaptation and survival that began with your earliest ancestors and will continue long after your own brief existence ends. Your life represents one thread in the vast tapestry of human experience, connected to both past and future through the survival knowledge, cultural traditions, and genetic inheritance that define our species' relationship with the natural world. In the growing warmth of spring sunshine, as your band prepares for another year of challenges and opportunities, you embody the qualities that have enabled humans to survive and thrive in environments that would overwhelm most other species: intelligence applied to practical problems, cooperation that transcends individual interests, and the remarkable adaptability that allows our species to find ways forward even when circumstances seem impossible to overcome. The spring morning that marks your band's full emergence from winter quarters brings sensations that reconnect you with the vast world beyond cave walls. Your lungs fill with air that carries the complex sense of awakening earth, the green smell of new growth, the rich odor of thawing soil, the subtle chemical signatures that tell experienced gatherers where the first edible plants might be found. Your eyes, adapted to the dim firelight of cave dwelling, squint against sunshine that reveals a landscape transformed by months of snow, ice, and wind. The visual assessment of spring terrain requires skills that go far beyond simple observation. You're reading a complex story written in altered drainage patterns, changed vegetation distribution, and subtle signs that indicate how winter conditions have affected animal populations and movement patterns. Streams that provided reliable water during autumn may have changed course during spring flooding. Plant communities that supported gathering activities may have been damaged by ice storms or unusual cold. Animal trails that guided hunting strategies may have been obliterated by erosion or blocked by fallen trees. Your band's first collective meal outside the cave becomes a celebration that acknowledges both survival and renewal. The food itself, precious stores of dried meat supplemented by the first tender shoots gathered from protected valley areas, tastes different in open air and sunshine. But more importantly, eating together outdoors reestablishes the social rhythms that will govern band life during the active seasons. Conversation flows more freely without cave walls to contain it. Individual personalities, subdued by months of enforced proximity, begin to reassert themselves. The psychological expansion that comes with physical freedom energizes everyone for the challenges ahead. The meal also provides an opportunity for the kind of strategic planning that determines survival outcomes during the critical spring period. Information gathered during brief winter expeditions must be synthesized with observations from the spring emergence to create an accurate picture of current conditions. Weather patterns must be analyzed to predict optimal timing for major activities. Resource availability must be assessed to determine whether stored supplies will sustain the band until new food sources become accessible. CAGO's report on game animal populations reveals the complex challenges that face your people during the transition to spring hunting. Many species that provided crucial protein during autumn months have either migrated to distant areas or suffered population losses during the harsh winter. The animals that remain are often in poor condition themselves, weakened by months of limited food and harsh conditions. Successful hunting will require different strategies adapted to altered prey behavior and reduced target availability. The hunting strategy that emerges from these discussions demonstrates the sophisticated adaptation capabilities that characterize your people's survival system. Rather than attempting to replicate previous successful hunts, the band will pursue smaller, more reliable prey while gradually building strength and equipment for major hunting efforts later in the season. This approach reduces immediate risk while preserving resources for opportunities that may develop as conditions improve. Your own role in implementing this strategy involves mastering hunting techniques that you've practiced but never used extensively. The pursuit of small game requires different skills than mammoth or bison hunting: greater individual stealth and patience rather than coordinated group tactics, precision with lighter weapons rather than raw power, intimate knowledge of specific animal behaviors rather than general herd dynamics. The transition requires not just learning new techniques but temporarily abandoning approaches that have served you well in other contexts. The first small game hunt of spring, pursuing rabbits in areas where they've survived winter in protected burrows, provides immediate lessons in adaptation and flexibility. The rabbits are alert and energetic despite winter's hardships, their senses sharpened by months of evading predators in an environment with limited hiding places. Your approach must account for their heightened wariness while taking advantage of their predictable patterns around feeding and shelter areas. The patient observation required for rabbit hunting reveals details of animal behavior that enrich your understanding of the natural world. You learn to recognize the subtle signs that indicate rabbit presence: characteristic droppings, feeding damage to vegetation, well-worn trails between burrows and feeding areas. You develop the ability to predict rabbit movement patterns based on weather conditions, time of day, and seasonal factors. Most importantly, you learn to think like your prey, anticipating decisions and reactions that guide your hunting strategy. The successful capture of several rabbits during your first spring hunt provides more than just immediate nutrition. It demonstrates that your skills remain sharp despite winter's inactivity and that the natural world continues to provide for those with sufficient knowledge and patience to access its resources. The meat is lean compared to the fat-rich game of autumn, but it provides essential protein that helps restore strength depleted by winter's limited diet. The hides, though small, will contribute to clothing repairs and equipment maintenance that keep the band functional. But the hunt also reveals the increased competition for resources that characterizes spring survival. Signs of other predators, tracks of wolves, foxes, and large cats, indicate that your people aren't the only ones seeking protein after winter's scarcity. The presence of these competitors adds complexity to hunting strategies while reminding everyone that successful survival requires constant awareness of threats and opportunities within a complex ecosystem. The processing of small game requires techniques adapted to the specific characteristics of different species while maximizing the utility of every part of each animal. Rabbit preparation involves not just butchering for meat but carefully removing hides for leather work, preserving useful bones for tool making, and extracting sinew for cordage and sewing. Even seemingly worthless parts like intestines serve purposes. They can become containers for storing liquids or creating waterproof coverings for equipment. Asha's expertise in hide preparation becomes particularly valuable during spring rabbit hunting, as the techniques required for processing small hides differ significantly from those used for larger animals. The rabbit pelts must be handled delicately to prevent tearing while achieving the flexibility and durability necessary for their intended uses. The process requires precise timing and careful attention to environmental conditions that affect drying and treatment success. The accumulation of rabbit pelts over several successful hunts provides materials for clothing repairs that become essential as winter garments show the wear of months of constant use. Asha's skilled needlework, using bone needles and sinew thread, can extend the useful life of critical clothing items while improving their functionality. A well-placed rabbit fur patch can restore the warmth of a damaged mammoth hide coat, while rabbit skin gloves provide finger protection during delicate work that heavier materials would make impossible. As spring progresses and plant growth accelerates, the band's attention shifts increasingly toward gathering activities that can provide both immediate nutrition and materials for storage against future scarcity. The first edible plants of spring, tender leaves, early shoots, and roots that survived winter freezing, offer nutrients that have been absent from the band's diet for months. But successful gathering requires extensive knowledge of plant identification, optimal harvesting techniques, and proper preparation methods. Neera's guidance during early spring gathering expeditions reveals the sophisticated botanical knowledge that survival requires. She can identify dozens of plant species during various growth stages, distinguish between edible and toxic varieties that might appear similar to untrained observers, and determine optimal harvesting times based on plant maturity and environmental conditions. Her knowledge encompasses not just identification but complex processing techniques that transform raw plants into nutritious and safe foods. The gathering process itself involves careful resource management that balances immediate needs against long-term sustainability. Experienced gatherers never harvest all available plants from any area, leaving sufficient root systems and seed sources to ensure future productivity. They rotate gathering areas to prevent overexploitation while allowing previously harvested sites to recover. This conservation approach requires sophisticated understanding of plant ecology combined with the discipline to leave valuable resources unharvested when taking them would threaten future availability. Your own participation in gathering activities expands your understanding of the plant knowledge that supports your people's survival. Under Neera's instruction, you learn to identify subtle differences between similar species that determine whether plants are safe for consumption. You develop the manual dexterity required for efficient harvesting techniques that maximize yield while minimizing damage to plants and surrounding vegetation. Most importantly, you gain appreciation for the complex ecological relationships that govern plant availability and productivity. The processing techniques required for many spring plants demonstrate the sophisticated food technology your people have developed over generations of experimentation. Certain roots must be carefully cleaned, then subjected to specific cooking processes that remove toxins while preserving nutrients. Some leaves require fermentation procedures that improve digestibility and create preserved foods for future consumption. Even simple preparations like drying and grinding require precise timing and environmental control to achieve optimal results. The spring gathering season also provides opportunities for expanding the band's technological capabilities through collection of specialized plant materials. Certain tree barks harvested during specific growth phases can be processed into cordage superior to any that can be created from animal materials. Particular reeds and grasses provide the raw materials for basket weaving that creates essential containers for food storage and transport. Some plants yield dyes that serve both decorative and practical purposes in marking tools and equipment. The basket weaving technology that emerges from spring plant gathering represents one of humanity's earliest industrial processes, involving complex manipulation of materials to create products with specific functional characteristics. The baskets must be waterproof for carrying liquids, strong enough to hold heavy loads without breaking, and flexible enough to be transported without damage during nomadic travel. Achieving these requirements involves understanding material properties, weaving techniques, and finishing processes that represent genuine engineering knowledge. Your attempts to learn basket weaving reveal the enormous skill required to master what might appear to be simple technology. The selection of appropriate plant materials involves evaluating factors like fiber strength, flexibility, and resistance to decay. The weaving process requires manual dexterity and pattern recognition that develop only through extensive practice. The finishing techniques that provide waterproofing and durability involve understanding of natural chemistry that rivals modern materials science. The collaborative nature of basket production demonstrates the social technologies that make complex manufacturing possible within your band's resource constraints. No single individual possesses all the knowledge and skills required to create superior baskets. The process involves plant experts who select materials, weavers who understand construction techniques, and finishing specialists who provide waterproofing and durability enhancement. The coordination of these different expertise areas requires communication and planning capabilities that belie the supposedly primitive nature of prehistoric technology. As spring advances towards summer and the band prepares for the major migrations that will characterize the warm months, the accumulated results of spring survival activities determine the group's prospects for the entire year. Successful hunting has provided protein and materials while restoring confidence in the band's ability to obtain essential resources from the environment. Effective gathering has supplied nutrition and raw materials while rebuilding the technological infrastructure necessary for complex survival activities. The planning process for summer migration involves synthesizing information from multiple sources to create strategies that account for numerous variables and competing priorities. Traditional knowledge about animal migration patterns must be updated based on current observations of wildlife behavior. Weather prediction techniques provide guidance about optimal travel timing, while environmental assessment indicates which routes offer the best combination of resource availability and security from threats. Your contribution to migration planning reflects the leadership role you've gradually assumed within the band's decision-making structure. Your hunting experience provides insights into game availability and behavior patterns. Your growing technological skills inform decisions about equipment requirements and manufacturing priorities. Your understanding of territorial boundaries and intergroup relationships helps evaluate the risks and opportunities associated with different travel routes. The physical preparation for migration involves not just equipment maintenance and route planning but conditioning activities that prepare everyone for the increased physical demands of nomadic travel. Months of reduced activity during cave dwelling have decreased strength and endurance levels that must be restored before attempting long-distance movement with heavy loads. The conditioning process requires gradual increases in activity levels that rebuild capabilities without causing injuries that could compromise travel safety. Your own conditioning routine involves hunting expeditions that progressively increase in duration and difficulty, tool-making projects that restore hand strength and dexterity, and carrying exercises that prepare for the loads that must be transported during migration. The process reveals how winter's inactivity has affected your physical capabilities while demonstrating the remarkable adaptability of the human body when properly trained and conditioned. The psychological preparation for migration involves adjusting mental frameworks from winter's relatively predictable routines to summer's constant uncertainty and decision-making demands. The security of familiar cave shelter must give way to acceptance of exposure and vulnerability. The social dynamics of close-quarters cave dwelling must adapt to the different interaction patterns that characterize travel and temporary camping. Most challenging of all, the contemplative pace of winter activities must accelerate to match the urgent demands of survival in unfamiliar environments. As the day approaches for beginning the year's major migration, the band's cave shelter undergoes systematic preparation for abandonment that ensures resources are preserved for potential future use while eliminating traces that might attract unwanted attention from competing groups. Useful materials that can't be transported are cached in hidden locations marked by subtle signs that band members can recognize but outsiders would ignore. Temporary shelters and equipment are dismantled or concealed to prevent their use by rivals. The final night in winter quarters provides an opportunity for ceremonies that acknowledge the transition from one phase of survival to another while invoking spiritual protection for the dangers ahead. These rituals serve multiple purposes. They process the psychological stress of leaving security for uncertainty, they reinforce social bonds that will be crucial during challenging travel, and they connect the band's current activities with the traditions and wisdom of previous generations. Your participation in these ceremonies reveals the spiritual dimensions of survival that extend far beyond practical resource management. The rituals acknowledge forces beyond human control while asserting human agency and determination. They honor the animals and plants that have provided for the band's survival while asking for continued abundance. Most importantly, they affirm the band's identity and purpose in ways that provide psychological strength for facing whatever challenges lie ahead. The dawn departure from winter quarters marks the beginning of another cycle in the endless rhythm of adaptation and survival that defines your people's existence. As the band moves into the brightening landscape of late spring, carrying the tools, knowledge, and relationships that constitute their entire world, you understand that you're participating in one of humanity's greatest achievements, the development of sustainable relationships with natural environments that support complex cultural and technological development despite seemingly impossible resource constraints. The migration ahead will test every aspect of your people's capabilities while providing opportunities for growth, discovery, and renewal that keep your culture dynamic and adaptive. The challenges you'll face: finding resources in unfamiliar territory, avoiding conflicts with competing groups, maintaining equipment under harsh conditions, preserving social cohesion during stressful travel, are the same fundamental tasks that humans have confronted throughout history, though the specific techniques and technologies continue to evolve. In the growing warmth of spring sunshine, as your band begins another year's journey through landscapes that offer both sustenance and danger, you carry forward the accumulated wisdom of countless generations while adding your own experiences and innovations to the great human project of survival and adaptation. Your story is just one thread in the vast tapestry of human experience, but it connects you to both the ancestors who created the knowledge that keeps you alive and the descendants who will build upon your contributions to face challenges you can't yet imagine.